Thank you. So first thing I have to do that I didn't plan on is to apologize. Thanks to Richard, our first speaker of the day. He had you kind of envision and think about the person that you would want to have speak last today, and I'm fairly certain in saying that you probably did not imagine me. And so whomever you did imagine, it's a big personality. It's not me, and I'm sorry about that. But hopefully I can entertain you a little bit, challenge you a little bit, and maybe even educate you a little bit today. So I'm 39 years old. I've been in education for about 34 of those years. And for about 16 or 17 of the last 16 or 17 of those years, I've been in higher ed. I got a bachelor's degree, I got a master's degree, I have a PhD, and for the last few years I've been fortunate enough to teach entrepreneurship to undergrads at a school just down the road here. So I have a perspective on higher education and college in general, and part of the perspective that I've come to realize is that college can indeed prepare students for the real world, but the current way that most colleges are set up, it doesn't do that. And so I have this sort of burning desire to talk to people about that and try and get people to change that, because I'm a firm believer passionately in the power of education, and I think that we've lost a little bit of its purpose and a little bit of its way. And so what I want to do is change some of that and hopefully maybe plant a seed that gets people thinking a little differently about education. And the way to do that is to go back to part of the purpose of today, and the call for today is looking at existing patterns and breaking some of those existing patterns. And so if we look at education and the existing patterns in education, and we think about when you were a student and the last day of school came up, summer break's about to start. How many of you were sad at that point? Okay, so there's a weirdo in the room. That's okay, right? I'm with you, so we can be weird together. And it's the same kind of thing, right? As students, most students are not sad when the last day of school comes. Most students are not angry when the school bell rings at the end of the day, when Christmas break comes up, when spring break comes up. And why is that? Because there's something better for them, right? There's something infinitely better for most kids, because most of the kids I talk to and I deal with are not big fans of the process of education. If we look at what education is and some of the patterns in education, what we see is they are about routines, right? They're about production, it's about efficiency, it's about a systematic approach, and it's about giving people answers before they even know what questions to ask. And that just seems so backwards to me. So let's picture this. Let's say that you go into Best Buy or any store, and you go in there, and somebody comes up to you, and somebody starts giving you this TV and telling you that this is the best TV ever, and you have no choice but to buy that TV. How many people would do that? Right. But that's exactly what, for the most part, education system does to these kids. It forces them in the door, for the most part, early on, right? And it tells them exactly what they need to learn, exactly how they need to learn it, and it doesn't really give them much of a choice. And I would think that that's a bit of a scandal. And it's a bit of a scandal because, to me, the beauty of education and the promise of education is that young people have the benefit and the pleasure of discovering things. And the only way young people can discover things is if they can ask questions. And so to me, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, it's about switching the conversation to asking questions instead of giving answers, right? And so, everybody got their planes ready? What I want to talk about a little bit is what the purpose of education is. Because I think in this whole big conversation that's going on all over the world, and there's brilliant people, Sir Ken Robinson and Jeffrey Canada, and lots of brilliant people around the world who are having conversations about why education system is broken, about, conceptually what happened and conceptually what we should do about it. And that's all fine and dandy. I'm not knocking them by any stretch of the imagination. But what I don't hear a lot are some more sort of action-oriented steps. That's great. I think it's very obvious that the education system's broken, and I would sort of challenge anybody to say otherwise, but that's great. So what? What do we do about it? So part of it, though, is really making sure that we understand why we have this system in place, right? So give me let's see how good you are with paper airplanes. I like it. So the purpose of education, right? This one is knowledge is power. So Antonio, where's Antonio? Nicely done, Antonio, right? So knowledge is power. Oh, see? Now we got somebody who's really cool. So we got a box. I ripped your box, sorry. I can't read that, right? Education is a forum for new ideas seen in, cut out, through the lens of the ideas of others, right? Very good. I'm more partial to red, so if you got a white piece of paper, it's not so likely I'm going to read yours. To get smarter, right? So here's the thing. If I start picking up these pieces of paper, which I'm going to do, and I'm going to sort of put them all together here, there's going to be some very simple responses. There's going to be some deep responses. There's all kinds of responses, right? And everybody has a different perspective on what the purpose of education is. That's part of the joy and the wonder of education, is everybody has a different reason why they engage with it. Everybody has a different understanding of what its purpose is. To me, the purpose of education is to create and help to mold a more responsible, more productive citizen and lifelong learner. That's it, right? And so we look at that, and then I think, okay, so whatever it is you think the purpose of education is, I would say it's probably not working all that well. And so why isn't it working anymore? Well, I think because it's not updated, right? It's not updated to accommodate today's students, right? Today's students who talk in 140 characters, who want their information digested in short video spurts, very sort of dynamic multimedia. They have access to every single bit of information anywhere in the world. They have access to anybody, anywhere, all the time. It's a different world than when these education systems were built. And the education system has not changed and updated to accommodate these students. And that's part of that disconnect. And so what would happen if we start to flip that model and we start to cause a little bit of trouble, right? I teach entrepreneurship. I am an entrepreneur, so inherently, naturally, I like to cause a little bit of trouble. And so within education, that's what I'm trying to do. And I want to turn things around in education. I want to encourage other people to do the same. And part of that is giving up control and switching the control mechanism in education. Because right now, teachers have control, right? As a teacher, I'm going to decide and dictate, this is what goes on in this classroom. I say, flip that around and give the control to the students. And let the students say what goes on in the classroom. And let the teacher deliver whatever the students come up with, right? So what I come to is a lot of deeper questions, right? And the thing that I challenge people to do is think of their own kind of deeper questions about education. Because if we're ever going to change this and actually do something, we have to, again, get down to that deeper understanding. So let's think about what happens if schools didn't even exist? What happened if there was no education system? And think about who would really miss schools. I don't think the students would, right? I have an 8-year-old son. I can guarantee you he wouldn't miss it, right? He hates going to school. He doesn't like it. When I was a student, from as little as could be till a PhD, I didn't like it. I never enjoyed my educational experience, right? I think a lot of the students don't enjoy the experience. Why? Because they don't have any control over it. I think a lot of teachers wouldn't necessarily miss it, other than the paycheck that helps, them live. But I think that while a lot of teachers are happy with and love the ideal of teaching and of what we do as a profession, the actual reality of it is a little bit different. And so I just sort of challenge people to think about, what if schools didn't exist? And if we don't want them to go away, then maybe we should change the conversation so that we can make them better, so that people want to invest in them more, so that people are more passionate and interested in them, right? And we get down to some of the how questions. There's why questions, there's what if questions, there's how questions. If we don't want schools to go away, what do we need to do? Well, we need to rewrite old curriculum. Again, we have to rethink the patterns that are already in place. And some of the patterns are, this is the way we've taught calculus for 50 years, and we're going to keep teaching it the same way, right? So why can't we rewrite that? Why can't we redo that in such a way that accommodates today's student? How do we give autonomy to those students? It's very simple. We give it to them. I do that in my class. The students I have in my classes, I don't give them any content. I don't grade any papers. I don't do anything other than guide their experience and let them develop their own sort of, here's what I want to learn, here's how I want to learn it, and I help them to be a guide on their journey, right? So it really is not that difficult if we just focus on the questions. And the kind of questions are, why are we afraid of change? There are so many people who will readily admit that things need to change, but there are so many of those people who are so very afraid of change. I don't understand why, right? And what if teachers and students rediscovered a love of learning? Again, right now, I would say there's not enough passion, there's not enough love when it comes to learning, which is what really education is all about, right? And how might communities rally around their educational experiences? If the students take control, and if the students get to develop their own stuff, and if the students have the main voice in the conversation, I'll almost guarantee you the communities automatically rally around that. Because when the kids start talking, people start to listen. It's a lot more fun than when even old folks like me, right, compared to some of my students, when old folks like me and folks start trying to dictate that. So I have a couple steps, right, aside from the questions, because we can sit here and I can ask good questions all day long, and you can ask good questions all day long, but at the end of the day, we have to do something. And what do we have to do? Well, I think there's a few easy steps that would help in changing educational institutions. I think one is to set up a startup board, right? Now, nothing against these folks, right? My parents are some of them, but look at advisory boards and the boards of trustees and all this at higher education. Typically old white men, right? Or at least old folks for the most part. And again, not that there's anything wrong with them, but a little bit protectionist, right? And they just are not fully aware and comfortable with the technological disruptions and all these other things going on in the world around them. So does it make sense that they are the ones, right, that oftentimes are developing policies and driving the bus for the experiences of these young students that there's no connection between? So set up a startup board, go out and get entrepreneurs who are young, who know how to hustle, who know how to spot opportunity, who are comfortable with failure and know how to accept failure and learn from failure. Get an advisory board of those people and let them help you develop an ecosystem that can promote active and engaged learning. It's not that difficult. They would love to do it. I promise you. I've been talking to a lot of them, and they're waiting for their alma maters to come back to them and ask for something other than a check, right? So we need to set up startup boards or something at that more administrative level that takes a different lens. We need to find faculty champions who are passionate about learning and who are passionate about wanting to change things, and we need to unleash them. We need to give them the autonomy to do the kind of things that myself and my colleagues do in our classes. Right now, myself and my colleagues could be in a lot of trouble because a lot of the things we do in our classes do not prescribe to any sort of rules or regulations we're supposed to, right? My boss is here today. He's kind of getting a little nervous, I think, now. But we need to unleash them. We need to let them say, go forth and prosper, right? Let your students have control. Do things, try things, fail, learn from that, okay? In any institution, there are these people that exist, and we need to let them and empower them to raise their hand. We need to lead with the student voice. So again, we need to let the students develop and take ownership over their own experience. Is it messy? Hell yes, it's messy. It's unbelievably messy. It's painful at times, but I can tell you it is unbelievably glorious to see young students who click into getting the idea that the experience can be theirs, that they can own it, and that they can make something valuable with it. They mess up a lot, just like I do or any other teacher does, but at the end of the day, they really get it, and they really dive in, and they really enjoy the autonomy that they get, right? And so the last part is breaking it down to an individual level, because at the end of the day, whether you are a student, whether you have a student in school right now, at some point, you need to be interested in education, and you need to take an active interest and an active role in education in whatever community you're from, because it is such a powerful force in the community, and it has such potential in the community to make those communities better. So what I challenge you with is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to change education? What are you going to do right now? What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do the day after that? There's a lot of things you can do. It's this big beast, right, which I think sort of detracts a lot of people from changing it, but it doesn't have to be. It can be very easily changed with simple conversations, simple questions, all of that kind of stuff, right? So the other thing I wanted to leave you with is, all of you have this document, Learner's Manifesto, and I kind of stole it from Mark Echo, so I thank Mark for the idea, and I didn't have to put the work in to come up with it necessarily. But I stole it and adapted it a little bit from Arc Echo, right? And I wanted to read it really quick just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So it basically says, and I'll fill the blanks in with my name. I, Doan Winkel, declare that I am more than a student and an educator. I am a learner. I am uncertain how and what I will learn tomorrow, but will overcome that uncertainty with questions and authentic discovery. I have some answers and will shout those at every opportunity. Answers I don't know and questions I don't even know I should know. I will seek out passionately. I will be aware of my environment and of my impact on my environment. I admit I will fail many times, and I will welcome those learning opportunities. I will face them with courage and share them with delight. I will create and encourage a community of learners. Every day, every action, every passion. I, Doan Winkel, love learning. Always, mind, body, and spirit. What I want you to do, if you so choose, and I hope you do, sign this, date it, give it to somebody else that you didn't know coming in here. Don't give it to your wife or your friend sitting next to you. Find somebody else that you don't know and give it to them. Take the manifesto from somebody else, you sign it and date it as a witness, right? Hopefully in that exchange you'll exchange information. And what I would ask of you is save the date. Remember the date, October 11th, 2014, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So take this sheet with you, give it to somebody that you don't know here, right? And then remember the date, October 11th, 2014, okay? What I challenge you with and what I leave you with is college really can prepare people for the real world. It really can, but it can't do it the way it sits today. But there's so much potential there, and it's so easy to begin the change of that potential into reality. So I hope that you believe some of what I threw out there today, and I hope that you can take some steps to be a part of that change, because the world needs it. Thank you.